Have you ever thought about how one seemingly ordinary moment could spiral into something unimaginable? You're walking down the street, minding your own business, and suddenly you're facing handcuffs, accusations, and a life-altering event, all because of how you look. Could this happen to you? This is the story of Marcus, a man whose ordinary life was flipped upside down in a matter of seconds. But what happens next, particularly in the courtroom, will leave you absolutely stunned. Marcus's life had always been simple and peaceful. He had his routines, weekday work, visiting his mother on Sundays, grabbing coffee with friends on weekends. Nothing spectacular, but nothing worrisome either. He lived with the understanding that minding his own business and staying out of trouble meant life would stay uncomplicated. But Marcus was about to learn that sometimes, no matter how carefully you tread, the world comes crashing into you. Marcus is thinking to himself, "I'll grab a coffee, then maybe head to the park for a bit. Sam said he'd join me later for lunch. Sounds like a good day ahead." As Marcus strolled down the city street, the hum of daily life surrounded him. Cars honked in the distance, people rushed past, and the scent of coffee wafted through the air from a nearby cafe. Everything seemed normal, calm. But something wasn't right. Marcus didn't know it yet, but a simple decision to walk down this particular street would change his life forever. It started innocently enough. A quick glance over his shoulder, and there it was, a police cruiser. Slowly, it followed him, keeping its distance but never quite disappearing from his sight. Marcus shrugged it off at first. Police cars patrol the streets all the time, but as he continued walking, the cruiser stayed with him, almost like a shadow that wouldn't leave. Marcus is thinking to himself, "It's just coincidence. They're not following me. I haven't done anything wrong." Yet, the feeling of unease crept in. The longer the cruiser trailed him, the more Marcus's mind raced with possibilities. Why were they still behind him? Was something wrong? Was it him? And then it happened. The sound of the siren shattered the silence, cutting through the air like a knife. The red and blue lights flashed ominously, casting long shadows on the pavement. Marcus stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding in his chest. "Stop right there. Hands where I can see them." Marcus is confused, turning slowly. "What's this about, officer?" Officer Daniels speaks sternly. "You match the description of a suspect we're looking for. Hands behind your back. Now." Marcus's world tilted. Suspect? Description? What crime? His mind scrambled for answers, but all he felt was fear. He hadn't done anything wrong. This wasn't happening. Marcus, now visibly shaken, tried to reason with Officer Daniels, hoping this would all turn out to be a terrible mistake. But reasoning wasn't an option. Marcus is speaking in an anxious voice. "Officer, there must be a mistake. I haven't done anything. I'm just heading to meet a friend." Officer Daniels starts interrupting him. "Save it. Turn around. Hands behind your back." Without another word, Marcus turned and placed his hands behind his back. The cold, unforgiving steel of the handcuffs snapped around his wrists, sending a chill down his spine. The day had started out peaceful, but now his freedom felt like it was being ripped away. A small crowd had begun to form, watching with confusion and concern. As Marcus was led toward the police cruiser, the crowd grew. People passing by couldn't help but stop and watch the scene unfold. Confusion and suspicion spread among them. Some whispered to each other, while others silently pulled out their phones to record. Bystander 1 is whispering, "Something doesn't seem right. What did this guy do?" Bystander 2 is holding up their phone and recording, "I don't know, but I'm getting this on video. He doesn't look like he's resisting." Marcus could hear the murmurs around him, but he had no voice here. He was being led away like a criminal, in front of strangers who didn't know his story, and there was nothing he could say or do to make it stop. Shoved into the backseat of the police car, Marcus sat in stunned silence. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. How could his day, his life, change so drastically in just a few minutes? The weight of the handcuffs around his wrists felt heavier with each passing second. Marcus is thinking, "This can't be happening. What did I do? What if this goes further? What if I'm charged? How do I even prove my innocence? Unbeknownst to Marcus, just a few feet away, a young woman named Sarah had recorded the entire incident on her phone. She didn't know Marcus, but she knew that what she saw wasn't right. Within minutes, she had posted the video online, and it didn't take long for it to spread like wildfire. As the video gained traction, people across the country began to share it. The footage showed Marcus complying with every order, yet being treated like a criminal. The outrage was swift and fierce. Sarah is posting on social media, "Just witnessed this in broad daylight. This man did nothing wrong, but the cops arrested him anyway. #Justice for Marcus." One Twitter user writes, "Why are innocent black men constantly targeted? This needs to stop. #Justice for Marcus." Second Twitter user is writing, "This is disgusting. He wasn't doing anything, but they arrested him anyway." #Black Lives Matter. Within hours, #Justice for Marcus was trending. The video continued to spread, shared by celebrities, activists, and ordinary people who were appalled by what they saw. People were outraged, demanding accountability. How could something like this happen in the middle of the day with so many witnesses? Meanwhile, Marcus sat alone in a cold, dimly lit holding cell, and his mind still reeling from the arrest. He hadn't been charged with a crime, and no one had told him why he was being detained. Hours passed, but the answers never came. Fear gnawed at him as he sat, alone with his thoughts. Marcus is thinking to himself, "Why won't they tell me what's going on? What if they keep me here? I didn't do anything. How do I explain that?" But while Marcus sat in silence, the outside world was ablaze with fury. Social media platforms were flooded with calls for justice, and the story was quickly gaining national attention. Marcus was no longer just a man in a holding cell. He had become a symbol. As the video continued to circulate, civil rights groups and activists sprang into action. Organizations like the NAACP and Black Lives Matter quickly issued statements condemning the arrest and calling for an immediate investigation into Officer Daniels' actions. This incident is yet another example of the racial profiling that permeates our justice system. Marcus's arrest is a stark reminder that we have a long way to go in the fight for justice. We are committed to ensuring that Marcus receives the justice he deserves. Protests were organized within days. Crowds gathered outside the police station, chanting and holding signs demanding justice for Marcus. The pressure was mounting. The city officials could no longer ignore the public outcry. Something had to be done. News outlets quickly picked up on the story. Reporters interviewed witnesses, civil rights leaders, and legal experts about the case. The narrative had shifted from one man's experience to a much larger issue: the systemic racial profiling and discrimination that existed within the police force. News anchor on ATV. Today, protests continue outside the police station following the viral video of a black man's arrest in broad daylight. Many are calling for the officer involved to be suspended, and civil rights groups have demanded a full investigation into the matter. Officer Daniels, however, seemed unfazed by the growing controversy. In his mind, he was just doing his job. After all, this wasn't the first time he had made an arrest based on a suspicious-looking individual. But he had no idea that this time would be different. As the public pressure mounted, Marcus's case was fast-tracked to trial. The day had arrived and the courthouse was buzzing with reporters, activists, and spectators eager to witness what would unfold. The room was packed with people, some there for justice, others simply curious. Marcus sat quietly at the defense table, his heart pounding in his chest. Judge Williams enters the courtroom. This court is now in session. Judge Williams, known for her strong stance on racial injustice, took her place behind the bench. Her reputation preceded her. She wasn't one to shy away from hard cases, especially those involving racial profiling. Marcus's fate now rested in her hands. The attorneys wasted no time in laying out their arguments. The stakes were high, and both sides knew it. "Your Honor, this case isn't just about an arrest. It's about racial profiling, systemic discrimination, and the misuse of power by law enforcement. Officer Daniels had no reason to arrest Marcus, and the evidence will show that his actions were based purely on bias. Your Honor, Officer Daniels was following proper procedure. He had a description of a suspect, and Marcus fit that description. The evidence will prove that Officer Daniels acted within the bounds of the law. But the crowd in the courtroom wasn't convinced. The viral video had painted a clear picture of what had really happened, and no amount of legal jargon could undo that. As the trial progressed, witnesses who had been present during Marcus's arrest took the stand. Their testimonies were powerful, each one reinforcing the same story. Marcus had done nothing wrong, and yet he had been treated like a criminal. Witness 1 testifies, "I saw the whole thing. Marcus wasn't doing anything wrong, he wasn't causing trouble just walking down the street. The officer arrested him without explaining why." Witness 2 testifies, "I started recording because I knew something was off. Marcus was calm and cooperative, but the officer didn't seem interested in listening. He just cuffed him and took him away." The testimonies were compelling, each one adding weight to Marcus's defense, but the most damning piece of evidence was yet to come: the viral video itself. When the video was finally played for the courtroom, the silence was deafening. Everyone watched as the footage showed Officer Daniels approaching Marcus, placing him in handcuffs without any explanation. The video made it clear Marcus was innocent and the arrest had been unjust. Judge Williams addresses the court. The court acknowledges the video evidence. This will play a significant role in the final decision. The mood in the courtroom shifted. The evidence was undeniable, and it was clear that the tide had turned in Marcus's favor. After days of testimony, arguments, and mounting tension, the trial finally reached its conclusion. The room was silent as Judge Williams prepared to deliver her verdict. All eyes were on her, waiting to see if justice would finally be served. Judge Williams speaks firmly. "This case is a glaring example of the racial profiling that continues to plague our justice system. Officer Daniels, your actions were not based on evidence or facts. They were based on racial bias, and that is unacceptable." Her words echoed through the courtroom. The weight of her judgment was palpable, and everyone knew that this case would set a precedent. Judge Williams turns to Marcus. "Marcus, you have been wrongfully detained and subjected to an unlawful arrest. This court finds you innocent of all charges, and I apologize on behalf of the justice system for the trauma and humiliation you have endured." The courtroom erupted in applause. Marcus sat in disbelief, the weight of the past few days finally lifting off his shoulders. He was free. Marcus walked out of the courthouse a free man, but he knew that his journey wasn't over. His case had shown a spotlight on the racial biases embedded within the justice system, and he wasn't about to let that light fade. Marcus is speaking to reporters, "This isn't just about me. It's about all the people who've been wronged by this system. We need change, and we need it now. I'm grateful for the support, but this fight is far from over." Marcus's case had sparked a movement. Protests continued, demanding broader reforms in the police and justice systems. Marcus had become more than just a victim of an unjust arrest. He had become a symbol of the fight for justice. Marcus's story is a powerful reminder of the injustices that still plague our society, but it's also a reminder of the power we hold when we stand up, fight back, and demand change. The road to justice isn't easy, but as Marcus's journey shows us, it's always worth the fight. With that said, thanks for watching. If you found Marcus's story as powerful as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of hope, justice, and the ongoing fight for equality. And until next time, stay hopeful, stay vigilant, and never stop fighting for what's right.